Welcome to Ferrum Football, 1st and 10. I'm your host, Taylor Chitwood, alongside my co-host, Brandon Roberts, and Coach Rob Grande. Coach, thanks for joining us this week and every week that we've done it.
No, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Coach, ended up losing to Averett at Averett to finish out the season. Finished out 5-5, 3-4 in the ODAC, tied for 4th. Let's flash back to the beginning of the year. Is this, what did we meet our goals? What happened there?
Yeah, if you look, I tell you every week, you kind of got to go week by week. But at certain points in the season or your career, you got to look at some chapters, and certainly the 2018 chapter closed out. Disappointed in the last 2 weeks with the results, but certainly for 10 weeks I wasn't disappointed in our team's effort to prepare and come out every week to meet those challenges. We just did things in football that cause you not to win, and I don't really set preseason records for how you want to finish the year, but there's no doubt. 5-5 is not sitting well with me right now, and when you look at the overall record there, but a lot of things to be proud of, but there's a few things obviously we need to work on.
Coach, you always say how you take every game one game at a time. You want to W this game. So we're going in the off season. How do you take in the recruiting aspect? Do you take it one recruit at a time? How do you go out recruiting in the recruiting process?
No, that's a great question, because it's like a whole new season, in terms of the process. And as I've told my coaches, the names on our magnet board and depth board aren't going to change from August 10th until we're done playing. But right now we can change that board by our efforts, and it's a broad picture right now, kind of the hunting gathering stages of where some guys are that we need to target, and then it kind of like a funnels down to that individual recruit. But there's a lot that goes into it, with coaches' recommendations, film evaluation, the kids' interest academically, and kind of who the kids are that would fit the Ferrum profile, and would not only be good football players here, but obviously fit into who we are.
On a positive, we did have a lot of names show up in the ODAC all-conference teams. First team, Brian Mann and Jonathan Johnson, offensive player and the defensive player there with Jonathan Johnson. Second team, Jordan Patty, John Childers, A.J. Camp, Rod Smith. And the third team, senior Malik Price, and you got Nicholas Helvey, Christian Johnson. So a lot of upperclassmen are getting those accolades, really setting the standard for the underclassmen that it'll soon be their turn.
Sure. Well, there's a sprinkling of guys that are returning, which we're excited about. Certainly, I think it's good to see guys like JJ and John Childers get recognized to journeymen. I mean, they've paid their dues. They've played behind some really good defensive linemen with Alvino and Montel finishing up last year, to name a couple. CJ Kashif and some other guys we lost up there, and for them to fill in some spaces and to get some recognition by the other coaches says a lot about the journey, and they're guys that may not have been on people's radar early on, but closed out and did a really nice job for us up front. Certainly Rod's had some accolades for the USA South. Brian, obviously, and Jordan, then Malik, who's another senior that's been an anchor of our O-line, Martinsville kid that is quiet, just goes about his business, and I'm glad the coaches saw what he had done for us all year long as well. And then the two young kids, with Helvey and Christian, who played a lot of snaps as freshmen. They're two of only 3 freshmen that were at any level of the all-conference, voting. So I think, to your point, we've had some seniors and some older guys that got recognized. A.J. Camp's got another year left in him, which A.J. had a solid year for us as a second-team member. We also got some representation from our underclassmen that hopefully breeds a little bit of fire in them and puts a little gas in their tank going into the off season.
So, Coach, you mentioned about 2 upperclassmen. We have Brian Mann, who holds 14 records here now, and Zach Clifford, who holds 8.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are going into their senior year next year, and they're arguably our leaders on the offense. How are we going to build around them going into next year? We lost a couple key wide receivers this season.
Sure.
So how do we build around them a little bit next year on the offense?
Well, it starts with potentially 4 returning linemen. We've got 3 rising seniors, Jordan being mentioned, but also having Sam Messer up there, as well as Sam Powers. Nathan Vass came on as a freshman and started a couple games and played a good bit at offensive tackle. And then Stephen Murphy, who played a good bit at the back half of his freshman year and played 10 games as a sophomore. So you got some parts there to start with, and whether you throw it or run it, you better be pretty good up front. And those guys had a really good season collectively. Obviously Malik kind of being that anchor at the center position and needing to find out who that next guy is going to be. And obviously Zach and Brian have come in as competitors from high school and become great teammates and roommates, and it's just a great story of two guys that are local products that have made the most of their opportunities. And we do lose Johnny and Nick Pierce on the perimeter, which played a lot of snaps for us, but that's some of the excitement of coaching too, is to obviously take those guys that are leaving and figure out who's going to be the next pieces. How can we get better along with our run game to be a little bit more explosive on the perimeter and balance off what we've been able to do with the run game. But if you look at the history of Ferrum Football with the run, triple option piece, to be able to have the run records that we've been able to create to complement that with the passing that Zach's been able to, it says a lot about our offense to show some balance, but we've got to continue that trend in order to be better on that side of the ball this offseason. But Coach Summers, Coach Shaw, Coach Brubaker, and Coach Brown, and those guys are going to have something to do this offseason to work with. But we like the pieces we have coming back, and we certainly are excited about going out and finding some other parts of the puzzle.
Another positive is, in one of those, you say that there's 10 one-game seasons. We did go 1-0 in one of those seasons against Randolph-Macon,
Yep.
who ended up in their first round of the playoff, winning their first round game over John Carroll. A big upset there on the road. So I mean that's a big win over a really good ball club too, late in the season as well.
Yeah.
So I mean we're there.
Yeah, we've shown some signs of where we could be, and where we certainly went on the road in a tough atmosphere and senior day for them, and a lot of emotion wrapped up in that. And they could have wrapped up the conference in that game, and we were able to push that another week to the Hampton-Sydney game for them. But there's no doubt that's at the top of the list of our wins this year. And Coach Aruza took his team on the road, got the first ever playoff win for Randolph-Macon, so it tells you a little bit about the team that we beat. And we had the two hiccups there in the middle of the year with the 3-point loss. But if you look at a three-game stretch, if you look at W&L, Hampton-Sydney, and Randolph-Macon in the last 15 years, they've owned the conference at the top. We went toe-to-toe, and after coming off a one-point loss to Guilford, took it right down to the wire and lost on the last-second field goal here against W&L. And I'm proud of my team for those two tough losses mid-season to come back against a really good Hampton-Sydney team here and getting a win, and then turning that win into a second win on the road, as you mentioned, at Macon. Certainly disappointed on the last 2 weeks not be able to take that another step further to finish out a little bit better overall and then conference. But Bridgewater, to their credit, finished with 4 straight wins and much better outfit than people projected. And Coach Clark, I said, he's done it for a long time and did a really nice job up there this year. But to your point, there's a lot of positives we could pull out of a 5-5 season, but the totality of it is leaving a little bit something to get that fire burning to get better.
That leads me into my next question. Through year one in the ODAC conference, does that raise the excitement even more as you were talking about in the offseason and season number 2 in the O-Dominion Athletic Conference?
No, I don't know if it's just my mindset or how I operate, but I really don't equate those things to excitement. I think it's just it's a really good league, and if you take the 2 teams went 4-3 and 4 of us went 3-4, if you take a bag and shake it up on a given weekend, you're going to get a competitive game, even with Randolph-Macon and Guilford and those guys that are kind of outside there. So if you look at the total standings and you look at the totality of the games, it's any given weekend there. But Randolph-Macon was the most consistent team throughout the league, and obviously us being the only ones to beat them, like I said, is a feather in our cap. But it's just an exciting time for us, and going on the road and recruiting. I was up in Prince William County and met about 10 kids that said, yeah, we saw you play, and they either went to Shenandoah or Randolph-Macon for a home game and their game day visits, and we happened to be the opponent, which is a pretty cool element of being in the ODAC and having some regional kids see us on the road when we play well. To when I go in to talk to them, they know who we are, and they were firing back at me about how we played in both those games. So it was pretty cool. Something we don't get out of the USA South just because of the demographic of those schools, and so you always ask me about these ODAC questions, but that's something I can tell you that's unique to moving into the league that I experienced this week when I was on the road, and it was good to get those two wins, but we need to get more wins, and that's part of the process we're going through.
Gotta start somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, but like I said, there's a lot to be thankful for, and there's a lot to be left to be desired, and it's kind of just like our record, it's 50-50. I mean, kind of I smile about some of the things and I cry about some of the others, and it's just about trying to get better with what we have and moving forward.
Well, we're moving to change for the last time this season. We'll have to wait till next season for our next installment. Ferrum Football 1st and 10. I've been your host, Taylor Chilwood, alongside me, co-host Brandon Roberts and Coach Rob Grande. Thanks everybody for tuning in with us.